Have you ever played a game that you simultaneously understood exactly why everyone loves it, while also having no interest in playing it yourself? I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Pipeline, a game that it came on my radar a while ago. The art looks amazing, the game seems exactly up my alley. It's a tight, strategic punch of a game where every move matters, where you're going to be slowly but surely building up an oil network, buying pieces of various pipe. I mean, that's amazing, that's incredible. You're buying pipes and connecting them together in a little puzzle that is simultaneously mixed with a heavy, heavy game in which you will have to optimize your way towards the perfect endgame. It seems exactly up my alley, it looks exactly up my alley, it looks like the kind of game that you can sink your teeth into as you slowly but surely optimize throughout every single move. And yet I have no interest in playing this game again. Now, I've played Pipeline twice, for disclaimer, for whatever context that gives you in terms of my opinion here. But it's a game that I only gave it the second play because I was wondering maybe I was missing something. I could see the strengths of this game, I could see why people would like it. I understood exactly what was going on in this engine, and I got enough done. To be clear, this is one of those games where the first thing you're going to have is you're going to have people down below saying, but you played it wrong, and you didn't do this, and you didn't do that. We did have reasonable endgame scores. I made sure to check it up in terms of, being in that 600 to 1,000 range or whatnot. We had players below 500 to be sure, but we got enough done. We had enough of an engine built up, and we did feel accomplished. And yet I still have no interest in playing this game. Now, to be clear, there's a lot I like about Pipeline. There's a lot to like here. There's a lot why, like I said in the beginning, I understand why people would want to play this game. This is a game in which the art is gorgeous. The game comes at you with these beautiful hues that just work together. This orange, blue, and white, which I guess I would acknowledge that I, as Board Game Co, am particularly interested in the colors orange, blue, and white mixed together. So I am biased towards liking this game already, just from the visual direction of the game alone. The game itself is relatively easy to teach in terms of you can get it to the table, you can set it up. It seems like a lot going on, but the rulebook is actually fairly well condensed and the actual implementation is simple. It is a worker placement game. You place your worker down, you take the benefit, you build your pipeline network, you turn one barrel of oil into a more refined barrel of oil, and you ultimately sell that barrel of oil. There's a lot more nuance to what's going on here, but that is the core structure of the game, and especially if you understand worker placement, if you understand building out your network, your optimization engine, there's not a lot of nuances to the game that are particularly difficult to understand. It's more the game that is about the sum of all its parts, which does make that kind of game easy to teach. The game rests on a pin. It is a fine-tuned piece of craftsmanship. Like I said, I will tell you all the reasons why I understand why this is a good game, why it might be for you, why it's something that I admire the game design presence on the table. Everything you do is so incredibly precise. Everything you do is important. The way you turn one barrel of oil to another, the way you build out your network, the decisions you make, when you buy a machine to run your network as opposed to going there manually, when you buy more barrels, more pipe, more oil storage or whatnot, then when you go to the market to buy more pipes to actually build out your network. Perhaps when you go to this technology tree over here and get different technological advancements that will help you do things differently. Every decision matters, and everything you do in this game is going to be, I want to do that so I can do that so I can do that. But if I do this, then that, then this will be better. What if I do that, then this, then that? You're going to want to do all of this and that, to be clear. It's the order and timing, as well as being aware of other players, how and when they will go to spaces, that is something you have to be aware of. Which that whole multiple paths to victory thing is fun. That whole idea that you can play this game never really building out a machine and still do fairly well, or you chalk your whole engine full of machines, running them consistently every single turn to try to turn your barrels of oil. You can go to the refined markets buying barrels of oil on the cheap, or buying barrels of oil that other people have sold in order to turn those up. It's about finding the patterns in the game, and the games will be different. You're going to have different criteria for when and how different barrels of oil refine. You're going to have different texts out in different games. There are different endgame scoring objective cards that will shift up the game, and each game presents a slight adjustment to that puzzle that you thought you just cracked. And speaking of which, the abilities over here, I love abilities. If you've watched my content, you know how much I appreciate fun powers that make you stand out from others. And these abilities, this tech tree will very much do that, because you're going to have 3 levels of tech in this game, and only one player will ever get that 3rd level, if at all, in each game. And so being able to see which which tech you're going to go for this game, or maybe multiple techs, and what strategy you're going to pursue with those techs to give you that little competitive edge over your opponents. These are going to be very reminiscent of the milestones in Food Chain Magnate, not nearly as impactful as they are not the core of the game. In fact, you can go through the entire game and win the game without buying a single tech, but they very much have that feel of something that is important that you have to get, but they're also expensive. And so that goes into, again, that whole pathway of different things that go on in this game, which you have to see the puzzle and kind of deduce your way out of it. And yet, like I said, I have no real interest in playing this game. Not again, at least. In fact, the second game was only really to see what I was missing. And the reasons for that are a fewfold. And first of all, is the game is incredibly dry. The game at its core is very, very, very dry. It is very mathy in terms of every single thing you're doing. You are min-maxing your way. I have 60 money to spend this turn. I have to do this. I have to do that. I want to do this. And you're just sitting there playing your own little calculator accounting puzzle, which isn't something I mind in games depending. And that depends is very tough, because many are going to say, but Alex, you love Food Chain Magnate, so why don't you like this one? And the answer is because Food Chain Magnate has so much interaction in the game that the math, it only gets you so far. You have to apply it to the greater construct of what's happening at the table. That interaction to me is what drives it. I don't mind math. I don't. I like it in games. I like that execution of trying to figure out the variables. But I like it in combination with the other players at the table, in combination with what other people are doing. And sadly, Pipeline doesn't do that for me. Sure, there is interaction. You'll go to a place, you'll have to buy oil, the markets get cheaper or more expensive as things go on. You'll have to understand what different spots others are going to go to, or others have already gone to. So there is interaction, but it's much more minimal than I would like in this style of game. This game is 90% math and 10% interaction, and that combination doesn't really work for me. Additionally, the game is not as variable as I would like, and I did say it is variable, but it doesn't feel variable. Meaning the game slightly shifts up a lot of small variables in terms of different levers you're going to have to push on, different levers you're going to have to push on in terms of min-maxing things. There's going to be different requirements for how you refine barrels of oil, and you'll have to slightly adjust what you thought was a winning strategy to whatever new is at the table. But it doesn't actually feel very different because the core game is very much the same. Sure, some endgame scoring objectives will slightly shift up, and the techs are going to be the biggest difference because the game has 7 technologies, or at least the base game has 7 technologies, of which you'll see 5 in each game. And those techs will be the biggest gameplay shift in the feeling of the game, but the gameplay itself ends up feeling very much the same, and that lack of player interaction means that you're mostly just figuring out what the optimal way to play this game is. Food Chain Magnate, many will have the same complaint, and I hear it. But in Food Chain Magnate, the degree of player interaction at the table means inherently the game has to shift as players adjust to each other's strategies. In Pipeline, while you will have to adjust to other strategies, like I said, it's going to be far more minimal than I would ideally like. In short, the game has more... It's too thinky, it's overly thinky, without the interaction to justify it. And one of the other things I don't like about this game, and this is a consistent thing, and this is a me problem, but in general, I don't like built-in timers on games. Pipeline is a game that's going to last 3 years over the course of 18 rounds. You're going to have 8 rounds in round 1, in year 1, you're going to have 6 rounds in year 2, and 4 rounds in year 3. That is a built-in timer on this game, and I don't like built-in timers in optimization games. I'm just not a fan. What you do is, what I like personally is, I like when a game says, when X happens, the game will over, and X not being a defined point in time, because then we're playing against each other. So a good example of this would be, well, Food Chain Magnate, Terraforming Mars, not the solo version. The solo version does have a built-in timer. Those are games where we're all striving towards something together. And so I don't feel this pressure of I have 18 moves to make this game work. And it's not about not getting enough done. We got enough done. I just don't like the pressure. I don't like the clock on a game that requires you to sit there and be like, well, I have to figure this out. I have to get this going. I have to make every single one of those 18 moves count. And in some games I don't mind it, but I kind of don't mind timers when the game is not that thinky, and I don't mind incredibly thinky games where the game has to head to a close but by the player's own design. I don't like the combination, incredibly thinky with a built-in clock. That's something that I don't personally like in games. It just feels like there's too much pressure on what's going to happen. To be clear, I don't even mind if the game takes 18 turns and we happen to get there because we're all doing things simultaneously. If that clock ends up being hit because we all achieved something, that to me just takes the pressure away. To me, it's about that mental pressure. That's the thing I don't like there. Additional notes, I guess, that I would cover in terms of what might be a problem for you, might be a problem for others, is first of all, the rulebook, while condensed, I think it goes for that condensed feel at the expense of how readable or how clear it might be. It's the kind of thing where things are being taught that are kind of meant to be understood, and you'll have to kind of get a few sections in and reread to get the full picture. The rulebook it's fine to be clear, but it's not amazing. And then lastly, while I said that I didn't have a problem with how much we got done, it is a game where I can see others having a problem with how much you get done. I can see others feeling like the game is too tight in terms of not being able to get that done. I think it kind of depends on how well you can see the puzzle being presented. The problem is those 18 turns, if you don't figure out that puzzle within the first 2 or 3 turns, if you don't see patterns that you can take advantage of, you will walk and stumble towards the end game, possibly ending up with only a few hundred compared to the 500 or 600 that someone else gets. So you might end up playing this game and feeling like it's too tight. It could definitely happen, and that might require multiple plays to get it out of your system. At the end of the day, Pipeline is a game. Pipeline is a game that I genuinely see why many would like it. If you told me Pipeline is your favorite game, I would have no problem believing it. I believe Pipeline deserves, or probably deserves, the rating. Well, I think every game deserves the rating it has on Board Game Geek. It's a well-rated game, and if anything I said sounds intriguing, you probably should check it out. If you like Food Chain Magnate, you probably should check it out. If you like many of these other thinky games, this is a game that is worth checking out. I recognize the brilliance of the game design on the table, but like I said, and for the reasons listed, I have no real interest in playing this game for a third time. Pipeline, if you watch my content, Pipeline is a game that I was really excited about. It's a game that I put a top 10 list of games that I was most excited to get to the table. And Pipeline ended up being the first of those 10 games that I got to the table. And it's time to move on. It's time for me to say goodbye to Pipeline. But like I said already, if anything I said sounded remotely interesting, then I do recommend checking out Pipeline. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I gave you the information that you might need to see whether Pipeline is a game for you or not. There's a lot to like here, but for the reasons I listed above, it's just not a game for me. Until next time, have a good one.